50 miles per hour, and the eye wall, the northern part of it, now pushing onshore near Cameron, Louisiana. So let's take you to the latest radar right now, again, as that northern eye wall is now in the process of moving in. North-northwest at 15, I suspect that we will have an official landfall. Remember, for that, you need the center of the eye to move onshore. That will likely take place within the hour, and the track was right on from the National Hurricane Center just to the east of Sabine Pass. So this is going to be in far southwest Louisiana, this official landfall. There have only ever, since records began, been 9 other landfalling hurricanes in the United States with winds of 150 miles per hour or higher. So the cone, again, very narrow at this point as it's now moving onshore, but that landfall expected shortly here near the Cameron area as a Category 4 hurricane. This red box here, this is a very rare excessive wind warning. We basically only see these issued when we have landfalling major hurricanes like that. So the excessive wind warning there, wind gusts in excess of 115 miles per hour are possible. And then on these outer feeder bands, we've been seeing multiple of these tropical spin-up tornadoes right where we typically see them in that right front quadrant of the storm as that pushes onshore. And now that the center is getting closer, we're starting to see some of the observations pick up. We do not have any observation stations immediately along the coast. I did see a report of a 100+ mile per hour wind gust on Twitter with one of the local observation stations closer to the coast. Lake Charles, though, now gusting to 71, sustained at 52. Beaumont right now is gusting to 40. New Iberia in Louisiana gusting now to 49 miles per hour. And what those winds are doing, they're basically shoving a wall of water onshore. Eric and I have been talking about it all night. The storm surge, one of the big threats with this system. And where we typically see the greatest storm surge, that's going to be from the center of the system and points just to the east. That's where you get that strongest onshore push of water. And that's where storm surge 15 to 20 feet will be possible. I've been watching some of the gauges in this area, and already we've seen 6 to 7 feet of storm surge. And again, as soon as that the wall of water kind of pushes onshore, that's when we'll likely start to see those numbers spike. So we have Laura. It's in rare company, unfortunately, with winds of 150 miles per hour or higher. Here's a list. Again, 9 storms, well, now 10 that we add Laura to the list once that makes landfall here shortly, of hurricanes that have made landfall in the United States with winds of at least 150 miles per hour. So Laura will tie for 5th on the all-time list. Number 4, to get up to 4, that was Hurricane Michael from back in 2018. Winds were 160 miles per hour. And this is an area that is no stranger, of course, to tropical weather, but this exact area has actually not seen a landfall from a Category 4 or 5 storm. That, again, is going to be changing here in a few minutes. The yellow dots, those are Category 4 landfalls. The red dots, there's only 4 of these, Category 5 landfalls. So those are landfalling Category 5s, not storms that have at some point in their life prior to landfall made it up to Cat 5. But again, zooming in here near the Louisiana-Texas state line, this is going to be likely a yellow dot added to that location, which so far, since we've been keeping records since 1851, we have not seen a landfalling Category 4 storm there. So let's go through the latest models on Laura as the center of the storm will move inland. And one of the good things with this system, it's moving fairly fast. So this is not going to be a Harvey type situation where it sits and stalls and dumps tons of rain and you get prolonged wind for an extended amount of time. This by tomorrow morning is going to be moving up into northern Louisiana. It's probably still going to be a Cat 2 by the time we wake up around 7 or 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Ultimately, this will swing up into Arkansas and then take more of a easterly jog once that gets into northern Arkansas, then potentially into Kentucky and Tennessee. That will be weakening as a tropical system. But I'm telling you, I think that the wind threat will probably extend fairly far inland with this system, even once this thing is, 50, 100 miles plus removed from shore. So again, we are keeping a close eye on the northern eye wall as it now moves onshore. It will likely be making a landfall here before too long. We are going to return you back to programming here in a moment. We will continue our coverage as this system approaches landfall on our KVUE Facebook page and on all of our digital platforms. We'll be live again at the top of the hour at 1 a.m. here on KVUE with another update. We'll see you then. been watching Hurricane Laura on its approach to landfall all evening long, and now that landfall is likely pretty much in the process of taking place. The northern eye wall has now moved on shore. This is the high-res radar coming from the Lake Charles radar site, and you can see that Cameron is really in the thick of it right now, where the eye wall has moved on shore. The eye wall, that's obviously where we get the strongest winds. So, an excessive wind warning has been issued there, where wind gusts in excess of 115 or in excess of 125 miles per hour will be possible as this system moves inland. Here's a look at the latest forecast cone. Obviously, now that the eye is pretty much on shore, we are expecting that landfall here within the hour around the Cameron area. This will be the first Category 4 or Category 5 hurricane to make landfall in this region of far southwestern Louisiana on record since records began in 1851. That big red block that you see there for Lake Charles and points down to the south, that's a very rare excessive wind warning. These are virtually only issued for landfalling major hurricanes. I recall seeing one of these with Harvey, with Michael, the top of these tropical systems that are moving inland, where wind gusts in excess of 115 or 125 miles per hour will be possible. These warnings here, those are spin-up tornado warnings. We've seen those pretty much continuously for a while now with these outer feeder bands that are spinning up tornadoes in that right front quadrant of the storm. This is something that is obviously textbook for these landfalling strong systems. Here's the 12 a.m. advisory for Laura. Winds are at 150 miles per hour, so it looks like this will be a high-end Cat 4 at landfall. Of course, after the fact, the National Hurricane Center, they'll go back and reanalyze and make sure they get the pinpoint observation. That's actually one of the things that they did with Michael. They went back and reanalyzed and knocked it up a few miles per hour. So they kind of retroactively gave it that Category 5 status. But as Eric and I have been talking about all evening long, the category does not really matter at this point. If you have winds that are in excess of 140 miles per hour, adding 5 or 10 miles per hour makes absolutely no difference. The damage is going to be catastrophic, especially where the eye is moving in and just to the east where you have that strongest onshore push, because it looks like the storm surge could be quite tremendous with this system. We've been watching the wind observations. Fortunately, we don't have a ton of observation stations down here in this far coastal portion of the state. I say fortunately because there's not any major city or observation spot there, but there are cities. Cameron is right there. And I've seen some reports on Twitter of some smaller observation sites with wind gusts being recorded over 100 miles per hour. Lake Charles right now is gusting over 70. And keep in mind, they're still outside of that northern eye wall. So we'll see how long that station can hold on. These things have a tendency to go down once the eye of a Category 4 hurricane is approaching, obviously. But it will be very interesting to see what the highest observation is for that spot. And what that wind is doing is pushing a wall of water onshore. The storm surge, a tremendous threat with this system, and this is likely really ramping up now. 15 to 20 foot storm surge is possible. In fact, while we have this graphic up, I've been looking on Twitter and some of the other social media sites as people are passing along some of the storm surge reports. As again, these are ramping up, so they're kind of sifting through the various recording sites down that way. I'm seeing a report here of 115 mile per hour gust at the Cameron sensor. Again, Cameron is in the midst of the northern eye wall right now. Nonetheless, tremendous storm surge is expected in these spots. Here's a list of the landfalling hurricanes that have had winds of at least 150 miles per hour. So there's only been 9. This will likely make 10 to the list here in inside the hour, as Laura is going to be added to this list. 150 miles per hour even ties it for the 5th strongest landfalling wind speed for a hurricane. Now, keep in mind, this is at landfall. So Katrina, for example, did make it up to Category 5 strength, which is stronger than Laura is right now. However, at landfall, Katrina was Cat 3, so that's not going to make this list. So it's landfalling wind speed. Hurricane Michael, which we all remember from back in 2018, had winds of 160 miles per hour at landfall. The Labor Day hurricane from back in 1935. Probably a lot of folks don't remember that one, but that one had winds of 185 miles per hour. And of course, Camille, one of the more modern storms that we look at. In this particular area, right near the state line in far southwestern Louisiana, there has never on record been a Category 4 or 5 landfall until this system. We've seen a couple of those landfalls near Galveston, near the Houston area. Farther south of that, closer to Corpus, we remember some storms like Harvey. Southeastern Louisiana, we've had a couple, even that Cat 5. And then, of course, over Florida, we have some big systems that we've seen over the years, including the Florida Keys. But we'll be adding one of those yellow dots for Category 4 landfall right here near Cameron, Louisiana. So as this storm moves inland, these systems, the tropical systems, obviously weaken as they move inland. But still, because this storm is moving at a decent clip, especially right there with the intact eye wall, that's going to provide a pretty extensive wind threat even well inland. I talked about this earlier. I was working in Georgia covering Hurricane Michael. That was a Cat 5, made landfall in the Florida Panhandle. And even when that made it into south central Georgia, there was about a 30-mile swath of damage along what was left of the eye wall that basically looked like a tornado had gone through. So even inland, these major hurricanes, it can take a while for the winds to spin all the way down. And this will ultimately move inland, likely still as a tropical storm over Arkansas that could pass near Little Rock, then swing to the east over maybe southern Kentucky or northern Tennessee. And that will provide a severe weather threat even well inland as those kind of outer feeder bands keep wrapping around. So that's an update for now. We are getting closer and closer and closer to landfall. Remember, for the official landfall, you need the center of the eye, or the center of the circulation, to make it inland. So the eye wall, again, right over Cameron now, and we're starting to see that kind of nudge inland. So once we get this center on shore, we will get an official landfall, and we will pass along that information for everybody as well. Seeing some folks on Twitter saying we'll probably keep winds at 150 and then they will do reanalysis later. So that again, the 150 miles per hour, that's probably going to be the initial landfall speed. Here's a report I'm seeing, major flooding, the Caucaso Pass. Water levels last check were at 6.4 feet. Anything over 6 is considered major there. As advertised, the storm surge really started to ramp up now that the system is starting to push inland. That northern eye wall now right over Cameron. We will likely have landfall here very shortly. Here's a report. 101 mile per hour wind gust was clocked at Cameron at 11:42, right as the eye wall of Hurricane Laura was arriving. So that is an update for now, everybody. We're going to keep the radar going here, and I think what we're going to do is, again, we'll keep the radar streaming. We'll just kind of pop in and out of coverage. We're going to be doing coverage on the TV side at the top of every hour. So we just did one at midnight. We'll do another one at 1 o'clock, and I'm going to keep sifting through some of the reports here, get some more graphics put together, and as I mentioned, we'll kind of pop back in on the stream every now and again, and we will watch this thing as it nears its official landfall. That's going to be near Cameron. Look at the loop, man. This is just so impressive. That northern eye wall right near Cameron now, and that's going to eventually pass up to the north, and that's going to head towards the Lake Charles area. So as I mentioned, we have a reporting site there. It will be very interesting to see what the winds clock in at if that station is able to stay online. So that's going to be an update for now. Again, next 10-15 minutes, we'll hop back on. As soon as we get an official landfall, we will start to analyze things again, and I will talk to you guys then. Have a good night. All right, hello to everybody streaming us live on Facebook and on our KVUE digital platforms. KVUE meteorologist Hunter Williams here as we continue to get very close to landfall. The National Hurricane Center has to officially call the landfall, and that's likely going to be happening very, very shortly as Cameron is now south of the northern eye wall. But remember, for an official landfall, you need the center of this storm to move fully onshore. So not officially called just yet, but in a matter of, very shortly, we're going to have an official landfall near Cameron, Louisiana as a high-end Category 4 hurricane. This will be up on the list. One of the, as I mentioned earlier, only 9 hurricanes have made a landfall in the United States with winds of 150 miles per hour or more. So we will add a 10th to that list. And of course, after the fact, once we get that official landfall and after all of this is said and done, they will go back and reanalyze the data. And sometimes they can tweak the landfall measurements. One instance of that was Michael, where after the fact, they actually tweaked it up and made it a Category 5 with winds of 160 at landfall. But it's very, very close. And I've been keeping an eye on some of the surge and water height gauges around the Lake Charles area, and we're starting to see those come up as well. Again, that initial forecast from the National Hurricane Center was calling for maybe 15 to 20 feet of storm surge. Where we typically see that is basically along where the storm makes landfall, and then also removed on the right-hand side or the eastern side, where you get this persistent onshore flow. And even once the center moves up to the north a little bit, you're still going to get that onshore flow even on the southern edge of that. Meanwhile, on the western side of the storm, you get this more northerly offshore push. And that's why, again, it is where the center makes landfall and points to the right where you get the most substantial storm surge. As I mentioned, this was the original storm surge forecast from the National Hurricane Center, which called for 15 to 20 feet of storm surge possible just to the east of the landfall location. And, even well removed, it could be on the order of 10 to 15 feet as they stay in that persistent onshore flow. Speaking of the winds, we've had various of these smaller reporting sites that have been reporting. Lake Charles is now sustained at 52, gusting to 71. Let's go back to the radar because Lake Charles is probably going to get into the eye wall here before too long as that northern eye wall continues to move up to the north. So essentially, here's the center of the storm right here. Again, for landfall, you need that whole center to move, or the middle of that to move onshore. And then here's kind of that northern extent of the eye wall like that. And that is heading up in this direction towards Lake Charles. I tell you what, that's going to go right over the radar, so we'll see if that radar can hold on. If not, we may have to switch over to our Houston radar. But that northern eye wall is moving up to the north, and Lake Charles has been gusting upwards of 70. Once that goes in, again, no guarantees that the observation site keeps reporting, but they'll almost certainly have wind gusts over 70 miles per hour. A rare excessive wind warning, that's what you see in the red there. The red non-filled boxes are tornado warnings on the right-hand side of that. But as we talked about earlier, excessive wind warnings are very rare, basically exclusively issued for major landfalling hurricanes, and that's what we have right now around the Lake Charles area. I'll take you back to the radar. I'm keeping tabs on Twitter to see when the National Hurricane Center is going to call that official landfall. Again, we don't have the official word just yet, but the landfall at this point is basically imminent. Seeing a report here, power grid having a tough go of things in Beaumont. So Beaumont right here, still it's quite breezy there with the pressure gradient, but Beaumont right here is still removed from the eye wall, and it may end up that passes just east. And again, that makes a world of difference between catastrophic wind and very gusty winds with these systems where that eye wall is going to pass. I'm still keeping an eye on some of our flood gauges. I'm seeing reports of 7-foot storm surge now near the area where this is making landfall near Lake Charles. Seeing reports of gusts in Cameron up to about 116 miles per hour right now. Again, they are under that rare excessive wind warning, which is basically reserved for these landfalling major hurricanes. Another report from near Cameron of 8-foot surge and still rising. Consistent gust over 105 to 115 miles per hour in the eye wall area. Here's a report of a gust to 122 miles per hour. A report from the Calcasieu Pass in southwest Louisiana where waters have risen over a foot in 12 minutes. Talk about that, a wall of water rolling in. As I mentioned, we have not seen the official landfall, but it is imminent. We're likely, minutes away from that, as Cameron is now in the eye of the storm. We need the center of that to push on shore, and the landfall will be taking place very, very shortly near Cameron, Louisiana. And as we talked about earlier, this is an area that is no stranger to tropical systems, but there's actually not on record been a Category 4 or Category 5 landfall in this part of far southwestern Louisiana. So once we get that official call, that will change. Here's the cone, which at this point as it moves on shore is very, very small. At the tip of that cone near the Cameron area. And this storm is going to move inland over the Texas state line and eventually kind of curve up into northern Louisiana. Even by the time we wake up tomorrow morning, this is probably still a Category 2 hurricane. Then eventually it's going to kind of swing up to the northeast. That will probably still be a tropical storm even inland over northern Arkansas by Friday morning. And then that could have an inland wind threat even over Kentucky, northern Tennessee, into Virginia, even as that moves hundreds of miles inland. I'm going to keep an eye on these wind gust observations as that heads into Lake Charles. We will see what the reports look like, again, as they are not far removed at all from that northern eye wall as that now starts to push on shore. Look at that. Cameron is likely within the eye now. So if you don't know, you have the eye wall, which is basically right here. And then the southern edge of that is going to be down here. So once you get in the center, it's briefly calm in there, and then you're going to get hit by the southern side of the eye wall, and things are going to quickly ramp back up again. But Cameron, for the time being, is in a little calm spell, but they're going to move back into the southern portion of that eye wall. And then north of that, Lake Charles is going to have the eye wall moving in here extremely shortly. They have already been gusting over 70 miles per hour, and they are not yet in the thick of things with the gustiest winds just yet. Let's actually switch this over to velocity mode real quick, and this is going to be a tremendous display of winds. We're going to stop this now, and we will query some of these winds. And it's basically on top of the radar now, so we're getting a very low shot there. It's picking up on 140 plus mile per hour winds aloft on both sides of the storm. So that goes right in line with the National Hurricane Center has winds up to 150 miles per hour. That's over water, so it's harder to get those observations over land. But nonetheless, this is a very powerful storm where landfall is imminent. Cameron has now moved south of the northern eye wall, so they are emerging into the eye right now. They'll get a calm spell, and then the southern eye wall will move in, and that's going to be another really rough period of time for Cameron as they're right here with the landfall. And again, a heads up around Lake Charles. They're going to be getting in the eye wall here probably in the next 30-45 minutes as this moves north-northwest at about 15 miles per hour. You may be watching on various platforms. I know we're streaming on the app. We're streaming on the website. We're also streaming on Facebook and Twitter. I'll pull up our Facebook feed, though, so if you have any questions or anything, drop a comment in the Facebook feed and we'll get that covered for everybody as we await landfall. Calcasieu Pass tide gauge now up to 9 feet, sustained storm surge. So they're getting up closer to 10 feet. And again, on the right-hand side of that, you're going to get continued onshore push even once the eye or the center of the storm has passed up to the north. Here's a report from Twitter. The radar site in Lake Charles, that's the radar that's producing the image that you're looking at right now, has lost primary power and has gone to generators, still getting data as of now. That's what I was saying. It's going to be a hard task for this thing to hold on once that eye wall moves up to the north. That's when things really deteriorate. Now seeing reports near the Calcasieu Pass, 126 mile per hour wind gusts with storm surge now over 10 feet in some areas. That storm surge, I'm afraid, we're going to continue to see some numbers like that as that wall of water starts to move inland. Another report, a report of 127 mile per hour wind gust right before entering the eye wall. Yeah, the radar for Lake Charles is going to take a direct hit from that. So they're already on that reserve power, and once these winds really ramp up with the eye wall, it's going to be a tall order for this thing to stay intact. Cameron is now in the eye. As we mentioned, they still have the southern eye wall to get through, so it is by no means over for the Cameron area, but the northern eye wall has now passed to the north. Again, for an official landfall, the National Hurricane Center calls this, so we're going to wait for the official landfall, but the center of the storm has to pass inland, so we're probably just a matter of minutes away from that happening. It could be within 10 minutes that we get an official landfall. This portion or this exact area in southwestern Louisiana has never had a storm this strong make landfall. This is the first Category 4 storm to make landfall in this portion of Louisiana since records began back in 1851. And beyond just this geographic area, it's only a small list. There's only been 9 hurricanes to have 150 mile per hour winds or higher at landfall in the United States. Again, we've had storms like Katrina that have been Cat 5s and then weakened by landfall. But at landfall, there's only been 9 storms with winds this strong or stronger since records began back in the 1800s, which is very telling. This red block here, a rare excessive wind warning where wind gusts in excess of 115 miles per hour are possible. These are reserved pretty much exclusively for landfalling major tropical systems. Let's look at the info on that. I'm going to read some of this to you. At 11:56 p.m., National Weather Service Doppler radar and service observations indicated extreme winds associated with the eye wall of Hurricane Laura are moving onshore along a line extending from Port Arthur to near Grand Lake to near Forked Island, moving north at 25. This is an extremely dangerous and life-threatening situation. Again, a rare extreme wind warning that's been issued. It includes the Lake Charles area, as they are now not too far from having this northern eye wall move in. Look at that, man. It is so close to the radar site right now. This is where the radar is. Right there. And essentially the eye wall moving in is imminent. So we will see how long this stays on. Right in there, you're going to get into some extremely gusty winds. So that is minutes away from moving in on that radar site. And we'll see how long that thing can hold on. Let's go back to our wind gusts, see if we have any additional observations. Again, a lot of these sites are going to go down. Yeah, we're still at 71 mile per hour in Lake Charles, but there's going to be significantly higher wind gust once that eye wall moves in. So we'll see if that updates or if it goes down. Yeah, as you look at this radar loop, guys, I know we've been saying imminent for a while now, but it's a matter of minutes before we get an official landfall near Cameron with this storm. Again, the center of the storm, which is right about here, needs to move onshore, so that's just a few miles away from happening. It's moving north-northwest at 15, so that will be happening here likely within the next couple of minutes. I'm seeing reports of a 97 mile per hour wind gust at the Lake Charles Airport. It may be that our graphic's just not updating. Let's go back to this. Ours is still showing 71. New Iberia now gusting to 64. Even over to New Orleans, gusting to 30. Still breezy there. Galveston's gusting to 32. But again, fortunately, they have the offshore flow, so you're not going to get the same storm surge concern there. There it is. Landfall is imminent. Only 9 hurricanes since records began have made landfall with winds of 150 miles per hour or greater. This is going to be one of them, so that will be 10 in recorded history. Our reporter, Luis De Leon, is in Beaumont right now. He is recording some video. Beaumont is, again, removed on the western side of the eye wall, so they're not in the brunt of it, but he's got some fairly breezy conditions there, too. But this is one of those situations where Beaumont, let's see, is currently less than 20 miles outside of the eye wall, but that's the difference between, as I mentioned, very windy conditions and catastrophic wind. So let's see what the latest wind gust in Beaumont is now. Gusting to 38. Meanwhile, if you get within the eye wall, wind gust over 115 miles per hour will be possible. So there we are. We are minutes away as we count down to landfall here. We've been watching Hurricane Laura all evening long. And that landfall is, it's imminent. Let's see, it is 12:50. We have another cut-in coming up at the top of the hour. So we will get some graphics ready for that, and then we'll roll on with that coverage. This might be more of an extended cut-in as we await landfall with this system. Did not mean to zoom that close in. Going to back this up just so we can pull up the info on the excessive wind warning. It's close. The landfall is taking place right now. We're just waiting for the National Hurricane Center to officially call it. Seeing some more locations reporting at least 8 feet of storm surge now. I'm seeing reports of 104-mile-per-hour wind gusts now near the Lake Charles Airport as they are just now kind of on the northern fringe of that eye wall. Check, check, check. Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
10 seconds. Stand by. 4, 3.
Time is now 1 a.m. as Hurricane Laura is making landfall as we speak near Cameron, Louisiana. Currently as a high-end Category 4 hurricane, winds are at 150 miles per hour, moving north at 15. We've had wind observations near the Lake Charles area, which is about to be in the northern eye wall, around 104 miles per hour. And some smaller observations farther down to the south, around 126 miles per hour, as this storm, again, is now in the process of making landfall. So Cameron is currently in the middle of the eye for this storm. So here's where the northern eye wall is located now. Cameron is now briefly at least experiencing calmer conditions, but what happens is you also have to deal with the southern eye wall. So while it's briefly calm there, they're basically only halfway done with this storm as the southern eye wall is going to push through. Lake Charles, which as we mentioned has seen wind gusts up to about 104 miles per hour. They are about to be in this northern section of the eye wall as that moves north at 15 miles per hour. It essentially stretches now from just to the east of Sabine Pass over towards about North Island, and that with the eye wall is where you're going to get the gustiest winds. Now, as it looks for Beaumont right now, it's breezy there. I've seen wind gusts up to about 39 miles per hour there. But it looks like the core of this storm is going to pass just to the east of Beaumont, so that's excellent news for the city there, but not as good news for Lake Charles, which is going to get the brunt of the strongest winds that this storm has to offer. Again, our latest forecast cone, now that the system's moving inland, we essentially have a very tight cone as we know where that center of the storm is going to track. This red box here, this is a very rare excessive wind warning. These are basically only issued for these landfalling major hurricanes. Within this warning, which includes Lake Charles, you could have wind gusts in excess of 115 or 125 miles per hour. Again, we had that one report of a wind gust of 126 miles per hour earlier. And what this wind is doing is it's pushing up the surge onshore. The surge reports now topping 8 feet for some locations, and those could continue to rise, especially on the eastern side of that storm where you have the persistent onshore flow, even as the center moves up to the north. By the way, just to the east of that excessive wind warning, we have a giant blanket tornado warning for these outer feeder bands that have been very frequently producing those tropical spin-up tornadoes in that right front quadrant of the storm. Look at that, a new observation now in for Lake Charles, gusting up to 98 miles per hour. Beaumont right now, which keep in mind again is outside of the eye wall, so not getting the brunt of the storm, is gusting to 45. New Iberia is sustained at 41, gusting to 55. And then as far east as New Orleans, they're well removed from the storm, but they are sustained at 21 and gusting to 30 miles per hour. Here's a look at the storm surge forecast in the pink. That's a storm surge warning from the National Hurricane Center. But this was the forecast that they issued earlier today prior to landfall, where along and east of the circulation, storm surge 15 to 20 feet could be possible, with inundation as far inland as about 30 miles along the coastal plains in southern Louisiana. As I mentioned, this is now, just kind of beginning, but we've seen storm surge reports upwards of 8 feet, getting closer to 10 feet for some spots. So we're keeping a close eye on all the water gauges there around the Lake Charles area, around Cameron, these coastal gauges, and we'll continue to keep you updated on the surge reports there. Unfortunately, as this system is now landfalling in Cameron, it's making rare company. Here's a list of the hurricanes, only 9 of them, that have made landfall in the United States with winds of 150 miles per hour or higher. We have the last island hurricane, that was from 1856. Our records only go back to 1851. So now that this has made landfall at 150 miles per hour, it is essentially tied for 5th all time on our list. Once, after the fact, after the storm has dissipated, the Hurricane Center will actually go back and do what's called a reanalysis of the landfall. And sometimes they can bump up the wind speeds a bit. That was the case with Hurricane Michael, which when it first made landfall was actually a high in Cat 4, but the reanalysis showed that it was actually a Cat 5. They brought it up to winds of 160 miles per hour. So that's obviously a ways away, the landfall happening now, but that's something that we'll be watching in the coming days. Although this is a part of Louisiana, you know, the Sabine Pass, no stranger at all to tropical systems. But as far as Category 4 or Category 5 landfalls, there has never on record since 1851 been a Category 4 or Category 5 landfall in this specific area. Keep in mind, as far as Category 5s, there's only been 4 of those. But again, this area here right around the Sabine Pass and Lake Charles and the Cameron, Louisiana spot, there will be a dot here after tonight, but thus far since 1851, there has not been a landfall in that region of far southwestern Louisiana. Now, this is going to move inland, and with these big systems, once they move inland, the winds spin down. But when you have to go from Category 4 to 3 to 2 to 1 to tropical storm to depression, it takes a long time. So I think still when we wake up tomorrow morning, this is probably still going to be a Cat 2 as it approaches into northern Louisiana by tomorrow afternoon. This will be moving into central and northern Arkansas, probably still as a tropical storm as we get into the Friday time frame, and then it's going to take more of an easterly component of motion. But I think that the wind threat is probably going to continue well inland. In fact, what the model is showing is some of these essentially outer bands forming the squalls or squall lines that could produce a severe weather threat down across northern Mississippi, Alabama. With those outer bands, you still got to watch for spit-up tornadoes even once this storm is well inland. So that's the update for now. Again, the landfall taking place as we speak. It's probably now officially occurred near Cameron, Louisiana, with winds of 150 miles per hour. This landfall, in rare company, there have only before this storm been 9 hurricanes in the United States to make landfall with winds of 150 miles per hour or greater. So we're going to have another update coming at 2 a.m. with the latest information as this storm continues to move inland. We will return you to regular programming on TV, but you can join us on KVUE.com, the KVUE app, our YouTube page, and our Facebook and Twitter as we continue our digital coverage. We'll see you there. Have official landfall. Just saw the tweet from the National Hurricane Center. At 1 a.m. Central Daylight Time, Hurricane Laura has made landfall in southwestern Louisiana near Cameron as a Category 4 hurricane. Maximum sustained winds were 150 miles per hour with a minimum central pressure of 938 millibars. They say potentially catastrophic impacts will continue. Man. I'm going to get that tweeted out real quick. Again, just bear with me if you're watching us on our Facebook page or any of our digital platforms. We really appreciate you tuning in. We're just going to, again, keep our coverage going, more of a casual thing when we're on the digital side. So if you guys have any comments or concerns on Facebook, toss them in the comments and we'll read through those coming up in a bit. We're just going to pop in and out of coverage again as needed. We now have the official landfall. As a Category 4, only 9 hurricanes since records began have had winds of 150 miles per hour or higher at landfall in the United States. So rare company for this storm. And of those 9, none of them have been in this region of far southwestern Louisiana. All right, guys, as I mentioned, we have officially had our landfall near Cameron, Louisiana. It was a Cat 4, winds of 150 miles per hour. The minimum pressure was at 938. This is the first Category 4 hurricane to make landfall in this section of southwestern Louisiana since records began in 1851. Cameron is in the eye wall right now. Lake Charles is now edging into that northern side of the eye wall. Here's a look at what the gusts are now. We've had reports up to about 104. Lake Charles now gusting to 108 as they get closer to the northern eye wall. That's also where the radar is, so we'll see if our observation sites can continue. This storm will continue to move inland by tomorrow morning. It's probably still a Cat 2 moving into potentially northern Louisiana by tomorrow midday and tomorrow late day. Then it will swing up to the northeast and still have a severe weather threat and an inland wind threat, even as that moves hundreds of miles inland. So let's see, it is 1 a.m. We'll do another cut in at 2 a.m. I believe we're going to keep the radar streaming here on Facebook and on our digital platforms. And again, we'll kind of pop in as needed, but the landfall is official. It happened right at 1 a.m., 150 miles per hour. Winds, the pressure was at 938. So I'm going to sign off here for a second, and we will look over some of this data. Again, our next cut in on KVUE coming up at 2 a.m., and we will keep our coverage going here live. For now, we'll get you back to the radar. Have a great night.